Welcome back, listeners. Hopefully you've all been listening to our first part where we talk about the DCU. Now, Gene and I are going to go into specifics about the Zack Snyder's Justice League, which by the time of recording was released this week in the US on HBO Max, in the UK on Sky Cinema. Other nations that will vary. I'm sure you, obviously, I'm sure you know if you're already where it is, where you can find it. So, Gene, so what are your brief initial thoughts on Justice League?
Well, as somebody who watched the Joss Whedon Justice League and then the Zack Snyder Justice League within days of each other for the first time, Joss Whedon's version was really bad, and so the bar was pretty low to clear to make it better. I liked elements of what Zack Snyder brought in, mainly, the idea of expanding the DCU to more characters and teasing about future story arcs, which were interesting to me. But my God, was it long? Was it dark?
Yeah.
Was it unnecessary in a lot of ways? As someone who often hears showrunners call their TV shows, 10-hour movies, I think, this would have been better off as like a 6-episode miniseries. Like, I think that would have tied everything together, because this felt like a lot of interesting ideas floating around that never really got tied into a coherent narrative throughout.
Yeah, well, it's thinking because it was split into parts, like it was like Quentin Tarantino film, and I was thinking, was the plan initially was to like release it as like a mini series?
I mean, it would have been, if they put in, a couple hours more, it would have been a heck of a interesting HBO miniseries to watch.
Yeah.
I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more.
Yeah. Obviously, because a lot of the reception has been obviously a lot more positive, but I think, as you say, it's quite a low bar to clear. And I think there is a lot of that. There's a lot of fanboys, and because its score is extraordinarily high on IMDb, and I think it's like the reverse of like the review bombing of things like The Last Jedi. It's sort of it's been review bombed upwards.
Yeah, like as if this is going to make DC, get back to with Snyder. I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, because Zack Snyder's got a new film coming out on Netflix soon. I think, is it Army of the Dead? And I know in our previous podcast we're talking about he does want to make a Fountainhead movie.
Yeah, I don't know if we need that.
It's really interesting because that's not going to be very action orientated, and that's what the thing he does. Action. That's what he does well.
Yeah, and when characters have to talk and emote and have feelings, that's not where things tend to go well for him.
Yeah. Madness! This is Sparta!
Yeah, I mean, he's great when there's a CGI battle that you need to have, particularly if you don't want to have any lights in it.
Yeah, that's what it's about. Yeah, I want to see my action scenes. But I thought like the first like 90 minutes, because I think this is where we're going to disagree a bit. I thought the first 90 minutes was a bit of a slog.
Yeah, I mean, I liked part one. I really liked part one. I liked, particularly compared to what Joss Whedon did with, that initial burst, where I come into these movies not, super well versed in DC lore. I didn't know who Steppenwolf was. I didn't understand what these mother boxes were. I didn't know who Darkseid was. Like, I didn't understand who these villains were. I didn't know who Cyborg was. Like, I needed the backstory. I needed an understanding of who they were and what the goal was. And so for me, that 40-minute burst, particularly with, the Amazons and the extended sequence there, I understood at that point what the story was going to be.
Yeah.
And when I watched the Joss Whedon version, I really never got a good grasp of, who Cyborg is, who Steppenwolf is, how Steppenwolf relates to other villains, who these other people, like, I didn't get it. And so I needed that extra bit of time to acclimate myself to the story. I didn't really need part two with the extended Age of Heroes sequence, but I got more of an understanding of what we were trying to accomplish with the story.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was one of the biggest improvements of the Justice League. Cyborg, I thought he actually had emotions, depths. You can understand where he was coming from, because obviously he was resentful towards his dad because of, well, not just being resurrected to be a living machine, but also because of his mother's death. I thought, and I did like that sequence where he's sort of going, where he's like showing how it's better explaining that he's not just half man, half machine. He's pretty much like a living computer as well.
Yeah, I understand a lot of Ray Fisher's complaints about how his character was handled in Joss Whedon's, now that I see how much story was cut out for him. He becomes one of the essential heroes of this piece, and I really felt for him on an emotional level, which I did not in the original version at all.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously Flash got more of an introduction as well, because he's obviously shown, because in the Josh Whedon version, he was just shown talking to his dad in prison. This version shows him actually, applying for a job, saving Iris West.
Yeah, and I loved that we got a feel for who he was and how he was trying to balance, getting, obviously the big story with Flash always is getting his dad out of prison because he didn't actually kill his mother, and all this, that baggage you need to have that in the story to understand a lot of why he's such a loner.
Yeah, and I think obviously, I think when it comes to speed of characters, there's obviously got a problem, because I think Fox nailed it with Quicksilver, but I think it's really Miller who did quite a good job. I think he got that sort of like, he obviously hyperactive, he was sort of obviously the youngest member of the group, but he also had those sort of good sincere moments as well, like at the near the end, where he obviously has to break the rule, shall we say, without trying to avoid too many spoilers.
Yeah, I really loved that he had an emotional arc where he goes from, super nerdy kind of loner, not really sure how to interact with people, to, embracing the fact that he can be a hero. He can be something beyond what he thought he could be. And, that kind of was the arc for a number of the characters in this, him and Cyborg particularly, who like fully embraced who they were to become heroes. And it was really lovely to see that.
Yeah. I think this was with the Josh Whedon version, because Batman was like a mopey kid, wasn't he? Yeah, because he was so wrecked with guilt. Whilst in this version, he's sort of obviously more focused, just trying to get the team together. And I think obviously because obviously that's where a lot of the reshoots came with the Josh Whedon cut. Because obviously Ben Affleck was unhealthy and quite a lot, or unfit in a lot of those scenes, and his performance was disengaged. I think obviously at the time when he obviously was having his personal issues.
Yeah, and I mean the big difference between, I think, the two films is the Joss Whedon Justice League really was a Batman and Wonder Woman story, with Flash and Cyborg thrown in the backgrounds and Superman showing up.
Yeah.
And then Zack Snyder's Justice League was actually a Justice League story where everybody got moments. It deepened all the characters. You understood more. It relied on our past knowledge of, Wonder Woman and Aquaman, and, from their films. And I know Zack Snyder consulted with their directors and writers to make sure he got the essence of the characters they were creating, so everything aligned. And I know Joss Whedon did not.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really track. The Zack Snyder Justice League tracks more with the films we've already seen.
Yes,
Doesn't.
Because I was going to say with Aquaman, because a lot of his storyline was pretty much setting up the Aquaman film we obviously got to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, although I know this is a very quick diversion. Amanda Heard's English accent.
Well, that was the crazy thing too, is like, one, it was horrible, but two, like, she had it in this one, but clearly they told her not to do it in Joss Whedon's version, and so then she didn't do it in Aquaman. So now is Mira British? Is she not, like, what's going on with her? Is she just
Yeah.
like one of Paltrow British, or like, like it comes and goes?
It's sort of like sort of like the Madonna, sort of like to sort of
Yeah,
develop
Madonna to Gillian Anderson. Like sometimes I'm English, sometimes I'm.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a whole different story of Amanda Heard, so we won't go into that too much. But yeah, I just thought I'll bring it up very quickly.
As somebody who often gets on Brits for bad American accents, my apologies for that. That was so bad.
Yeah. Well, we're used to it by now. we just
people about the accent. Just do it. It's not that hard, guys.
Yeah, and obviously there was this version of the film, which I would say there was obviously lots of setup as well, but obviously a bit of setup for Flash, and I would say with it, I couldn't help but think of the Avengers, particularly like Infinity War was so. If this was released as it was intended, I think a lot of these comparisons wouldn't be so prevalent. But obviously, it's released on the back end of Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah, and I mean, this felt a lot to me like a earlier MCU film, more like the actual Avengers, where you get the game together, but you get the game together, and then there's post-credit sequences that not only hint at future movies within the series, but also hint at new characters, or new characters are slightly introduced, and you get this feel of there's this bigger world that we're going to all get into and explore together, which is one thing I loved about early MCU, is the hints of what's coming and how the world's going to grow and build slowly. And this was the first time, I think, with the DCU, they kind of grabbed that same piece of what Marvel's done and said, there's this wider world and we're going to get there. And these are the characters you're going to get to see.
Yeah, I was thinking like with Darkseid, because essentially him and Thanos are quite similar in the sense, big.
Also in design, they look a lot alike.
Yeah. And Darkseid has a load of lieutenants, just like Thanos did in the Infinity War and Endgame. Well, particularly Infinity War.
Yeah, I had to look up a couple of them when we got to see a couple of them. I was like, oh, who are these people? And I was like, these people sound very interesting.
Yeah, I would also say with this, Steppenwolf was improved a lot, because obviously they rewrote the Whedon version that he was just the big bad, whilst in the Snyder version he was basically Zuko and Starscream combined, wasn't he?
Yeah, and like I talked to a couple people I know, like my dad's a very big DC fanboy and very well versed in the history of DC. And his main complaint after the original Justice League was released was, Steppenwolf's not powerful enough to be this much of a bad guy. Like, you should be able to kill Steppenwolf. He doesn't have the power of Darkseid. He's not. It shouldn't take you that long to vanquish him.
Yeah.
And in this version, I liked that it was clear that he reported up to someone else who reported up, like he's middle management within Darkseid's organization.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed, that it clearly was, the Thanos model of, we'll send out my, lower people, and if they fail, then I'll send out some higher people, and then eventually I'll have to do it myself, kind of thing.
Pretty much, yeah. It's all. As I said, he's sort of someone seeking redemption. He just wants to try and get back in Darkseid's good books, get back to his home world.
Well, yeah, and it continues that arc of every superhero movie I was talking about in our last podcast. Of he wants to prove himself. He wants to be better than he was, and oh, poor Steppenwolf. But he looked really cool in this version compared to the other one. Like, oh, he looked scary.
Yeah, I think with the previous version, again, it was because of they rushed it out. That's why a lot of the CGI wasn't very good.
Well, in this one, I don't know if you noticed it as well, but it distracted me a bit. Is every time you had a close up of one of the actors, it looked like you could see either the pores in their skin or like the coating of makeup on them, like very clearly. And it was odd to me that, in all the time he spent correcting his CGI, that Snyder would keep it as like really strange. The faces look strange to me.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think it was some of the CGI still wasn't that great. I don't think it's because I think when you compare like Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, the CGI was obviously very good on those films. Like it's like that, you know, you had your big Avengers style shot with all the heroes together going towards the tower.
Yep.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. Just like, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the things with Cyborg, as cool as the character was designed, you know, when things would move or change, you could tell like the CGI wasn't quite perfect. It wasn't quite like Cat's level, like crazy, but there's certain things like the face moved in ways where it shouldn't move with the rest of the body, and there was some issues there.
Yeah. I wonder if obviously Snyder got to release the film as he was intended it. Obviously, they would never have released a free and that film that's nearly 4 hours long in theaters.
Right.
But I was wondering, was this version really just part one, and obviously part two was going to be more focused on Darkseid? And obviously, if that was the case, obviously the Snyder cut that would have been released in theaters would have actually been trimmed a bit more to be more like 2.5, 3 hour long film.
Yeah, my guess, and Snyder started talking a lot about what he wanted. He wanted a trilogy, and you know, it was going to be the post-apocalyptic future where, you know, Superman, you know, and they hint at it in the Snyder cut. You see flash forwards throughout the film of it.
Yeah.
Where, you know, Wonder Woman's killed and Batman lets Lois die, and that turns Superman evil, and all this stuff about how, you know, and I can't remember what comic it's based off, but there's some story that was based off of too. And but you know, I'm good with the post-apocalyptic futures, but then of course Barry, I would have to like go back in time and save Lois and the whole thing. And you know, I think if this was like the first installment in the trilogy, I don't know if we would have gotten, you know, obviously the post-credit sequences might not have been what we got in this one, and the flash forwards we might not have gotten to the extent we did. But I suspect Darkseid may have made like a Thanos-esque appearance at the end where they say, "Oh, Steppenwolf failed," and he's like, "Okay," and that might have been our post-credit scene to let us know what's coming. So I think they would have probably cut down a lot of, you know, the Darkseid elements of it and a lot of the hints at the future, and been more focused on stopping Steppenwolf, making it clear that Darkseid is the one pulling the puppet strings, and then setting us up for, you know, here's what Superman has to live for. Here's what Batman has to live for. Oh, there's new potential Justice League members coming in the next film, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Because I'm obviously, with Darkseid, because he was replayed by, is it Roy Porter or Ray Porter? Something like that. Yeah. Because obviously, if this was a theatrical film, they would have probably gotten a big name star. Porter's more of a voice actor, and I think obviously a very good voice actor, but you could have pictured some big star would have played Darkseid if it was the proper theatrical version.
Yeah, I assume the post-credit sequence would have been somebody else in motion capture, and then just, you know, I don't know. I'm trying to think of who's not in Marvel movies yet who could do it, but yeah, some like big name, like, you know, I don't know,
someone with deep voice.
Yeah, someone like Jeff Daniels or somebody, like, you know, have him. And then by the time we get to, you know, the second film in the trilogy, Darkseid's much more prevalent and much more involved in it. And by, you know, so he's on set. And the third one, it's just he's taken over Earth and it's an all-out battle with him involved, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. I was also, well, I would say with this version, because I've a lot more violent and quite a bit of swearing. Again, would not have been put into a PG-13 theatrical release, would it?
No, and a lot of blood. I was surprised because, I mean, for all the superhero movies we watch, the amount of blood we see is, you know, usually someone has like a cut on their face. Like, it's never someone's head gets smashed against a rock and there's blood everywhere. Like, it's much more violent than I expected.
So that's what I thought, because it was rated. I think my first indication was it was rated 15, which is like the UK equivalent of the R rating.
Yeah, it was rated R here.
Yeah, both, and you sort of like that, sort of like doing their sort of their little prequel Lord of the Rings style moment with the big battle, and you say people getting axes shoved in them and blood going all over the place.
Yeah, everyone's bleeding. There's arrows and heads are coming off, and oh my goodness.
Yeah, it sort of appeals to my primal sense, but then they use quite a lot of the F word as quite a few of the F word, and I do think I'm of the view when it comes to swearing, less is more in films, because I think it tends to be more impactful if you don't have to use it too much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of, things are going great. Oh, suddenly the villain's here and you're not expecting it. That's when you drop the swear, because that's the moment when it's most impactful for you.
Yeah.
When you're like, oh no. Because the audience is probably saying the same thing. So it just connects you and the audience a little bit more in that case.
Yeah, because I think like particularly at the end, because obviously they had the epilogue with the post-apocalyptic future and Batman going to Joker, I will fucking kill you. And you think,
oh God.
You think, did you really need the F word? Didn't you just say, I will kill you? Would have been just as impactful.
As much as I liked elements of that post-apocalyptic thing, I was intrigued by, that's the kind of thing I think Zack Snyder could do really well, is that kind of darkness that's baked into the plot of itself. Yeah. That sequence, which I heard is like the main reshoot for the Snyder cut, was that sequence only. Yeah. Like, oh my God, it just, why? It was so poorly written. The dialogue was abysmal. And I was like, you can get across what you're trying to do without this like 3-minute interlude like this.
Yeah, I know. I feel it's sort of like some people have really praised Jet and Leto in his performance in this, but I was thinking, I really miss Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Heath Ledger is always going to be the quintessential Joker. Yeah. Like, he got it, and he didn't have to go too far to get it, and I appreciate that. And Leto is just, it feels like he's trying so hard to be on that level, and he just never gets there.
Yeah, because I back to when before Suicide Squad was made, I was thinking, Leto, I was thinking he's actually a good choice. Generally a good actor, does lots of indie films. Obviously, he recently he won, or at least was nominated for.
He won. He won.
For Dallas Buyers Club as well. So I was thinking good choice, but yeah, when you hear the stories of what he got up to, you're thinking, oh, because I really want to work with someone who's sending me used condoms and dead rats.
Yeah, I mean, if you did that at any other job, you'd be fired. So I don't understand why it's okay for him to do that.
Yeah, I was thinking like with Viola Davis, he basically did not do anything with her because he was pretty much warned, don't, because your husband will screw you up.
And also, in the grand hierarchy of actors in Suicide Squad, Viola Davis ranks higher than Jared Leto in, her ability and her, like, no, you should not be messing with 2-time Oscar winner Viola Davis, possibly coming up 3-time Oscar winner. Like, you don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we'll have another discussion on this at some point, but I think because it seems to be a change in like filming culture as well, because I think a lot more filmmakers are having like a no asshole rule.
Yeah, and I'm fully involved. I'm fully in favor of that. Like, I've worked with some assholes in my day, and I'd love to not have them if I'm doing something as vulnerable as some of these actors have to do.
I think I can't remember who's did the stories. I thought this was quite a fun story. Like there was an American actor who say like he was doing the method, doing all these things, and like British actor goes, "Have you just tried acting? It's a lot easier."
Yeah. Well, and like on the new Greta Gerwig film, like they fired Shia LaBeouf because apparently he was being too method and he's an asshole. So.
Yes. Shall we go back to Justice League quickly? Because obviously Justice League has obviously done well critically, and if it gets a lot more people to subscribe to HBO Max, it's obviously then to AT&T, it would be job done. And I know you're working on writing an article at the moment, but because what were the you think with the success of Justice League, would there be more sort of like campaigns like this working, more revisions of films being released this way?
Like, personally, I'm terrified of
Yeah.
the prospect of,
Yeah.
a vocal, often it's a minority, like with the Star Wars Backlash, there was a very vocal minority of people who watched it and thought that. I don't like the idea of audiences dictating, what films are, what TV shows are. And I've seen it on some TV shows too, where, a showrunner gets so tight with the fans that they turn their show into essentially fan service, and it removes all the stakes, it removes all the energy. It turns it basically into a vehicle to give the fans exactly what they want when they want it,
Yeah.
which only serves to churn out more toxic fandoms that aren't necessarily like bad people or mean or nasty to other people, but the toxicity is they believe they're entitled to what they want when they want it. And I think, it's okay to disagree about the quality of the film. And with, the Snyder Cut, yeah, the original Justice League sucked. Like, it was a bad movie. I don't know if this is, objectively a good movie, but it's absolutely a better film than what we had before. I think universally, even if people hate both movies, they can agree that this is a better movie than the one we got. That doesn't mean we should get a new Last Jedi. It doesn't mean we should get a redo on The Rise of Skywalker. It doesn't mean that fans should get a say in what kind of TV shows and movies are made. You tell them what they want by giving them money and giving them your viewership. And if you don't like it, don't watch it. But you shouldn't be able to bully a studio into fixing things the way you want them.
I think it's like video game critic Ben Crosher, or people will know him as Yahtzee. I think he puts it really well. You may say what you want, but you don't actually know what you want until you actually get it.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of something like that, because yes, I think with any franchise, yes, someone who's a fan does help. But I think sometimes you do also need that outside opinion as well whenever you're making a film. And I think as long as you're willing to learn, willing to sort of have a good try and get a good understanding, if you get a job of making a big franchise film of some sort, that's fine. And admittedly, with one thing, I would love to make a Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon. If I ever did that, though, there would be some decisions that I know would receive backlash.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is you can't have filmmakers working in fear that, people are going to get mad on Twitter and that's going to ruin their career just because they don't like the film they made.
I mean, that's what pretty much what James Mangold said when he was being tapped up to do the Boba Fett film, wasn't he? And he pretty much saying like, if you can't let filmmakers, be creative, have take risks or whatever, you're just going to get bland products. You're going to just end up having just hacks or just yes men making these films.
Yeah. And it's not going to be fun to watch. And I don't think fans really want what they think they want in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to make you enjoy it if it's exactly what you've asked for.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously with like loads of things, like obviously I'm a big fan of the Bond series. You go to a Bond, you probably have like 10 Bond fans in a room. They'll probably tell you 10 different things of what they want in a Bond film.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like using the MCU as an example, I've had conversations with friends where, I talk about how I'm not a huge Captain America fan. I've never been one. And they just are shocked because he's their favorite Avenger. And I'm like, well, no, I prefer this Avenger. I'm like, I don't like Hawkeye, and someone else loves Hawkeye. Like, everyone has a different opinion of what they want. And it's whoever yells the loudest, is that the one who gets heard? That's not how you want, like, because there's millions and millions of people who aren't screaming and yelling about how angry they are about something.
Yeah.
So when you make a film to cater to the minority that are yelling, you're going to alienate a chunk of that audience too, which is something to keep in mind.
And that's all goes back to our previous podcast about, because we were talking about sort of political opinions on Twitter and on social media. most people don't go out screaming their viewpoints. They just, well, so as I said, it's only like the really passionate minority that go on about it on Twitter or Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, it's that whole squeaky wheel gets the grease situation. And, in this case, sure, we got a far too long for a movie that did rectify some of the problems with the previous one. But, I so hope this doesn't become, par for the course with other films and other series.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that one. Yeah, I think that's a good conclusion for today. So, listeners, thank you very much. Please subscribe, like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You know the drill. And we'll speak again to you soon. Cheers.